We are going to keep fighting. We are going to stay on alert every single time that these billionaire warmongers try to escalate. Know that they have a formidable force that they are dealing with.
Let's talk about what's really going on with war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu right now. Because it's a mess, and the more you look, the worse it gets. Israel is in serious political chaos, and at the center of it all is a prime minister who just won't go away. No matter how loud the protests get, how deep the corruption allegations go, or how many people are out in the streets calling for his resignation. Take a moment to like and share this video to boost its visibility. Thank you.
Bombs in the air! US out of everywhere! Just yesterday was the 75th anniversary of the Korean War, also known as the Forgotten War here in the US, but we will never forget the terror the US brought to our people. We can't trust anything the US or Israel says about a ceasefire. Israel and the US just proved with their attack on Iran that they cannot be trusted.
Let's start with the protests. They've been going on for months. Thousands and thousands of Israelis, including reservists, retired generals, and even families of hostages, are filling the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem almost every week now. And this isn't some fringe movement. We're talking massive crowds. Some estimates say over 100,000 at one point. People are furious. Why? Because they believe war criminal Netanyahu is using war first in Gaza, now with Iran as a political shield. Instead of working on peace, he's launching strikes and then bragging about them on TV, all while ignoring the real crisis back home. Hostage families say he's doing nothing to bring their loved ones home.
I feel that this war only takes life of, dear friends and dear soldiers, and I feel that we are going to nowhere. It is not clear to me why are we still fighting in Gaza. I'm worried about the incentives, and I'm worried about the future of the society, and I'm also worried about what is happening in Gaza itself.
I think it should have happened a year and a half ago, but yes, I think now, absolutely, tomorrow morning he should wake up and say, there's a ceasefire with Hamas, bring all the hostages home, and let's start to rebuild and heal.
We will never accept or tolerate the idea that Palestinian lives are less sacred, that our people are expendable, that Palestinian parents mourn their children less, or that our children feel pain less, that their killing is acceptable or less grave, that those killing them have a legitimate claim to supremacy that makes them immune to condemnation and to being held accountable. And no one should accept these double standards, especially when it comes to children. The same who evoke genocide every single time an Israeli is killed express outrage that we evoke genocide following the killing and maiming of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, many of whom are children, and following the destruction by Israel of all the requirements of life for over 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. All children are entitled to life, to freedom, to dignity, to security. They are entitled to their childhood. Those who have to ask what is the nationality of that child, what is the faith of that child, what is the race of that child, to know if they should be outraged or shaken by their fate, cannot claim to value human life, cannot claim that they honor international law, and cannot claim that they defend humanity. We should all denounce, we should all stand against seeing children killed, maimed, held captive, regardless of who they are.
Free, free, free Palestine!
The judicial overhaul, which many believe was designed to let him dodge prison, is still haunting his reputation. People see it as a full-blown attempt to dismantle Israel's democracy. Now here's the kicker. War criminal Netanyahu is still standing trial on 3 criminal charges. Yep, he's an indicted prime minister who's still sitting in office. The cases go back years, one about getting luxury gifts from billionaires, another about secretly cutting deals for good media coverage, and the big one, Case 4000, where he's accused of giving regulatory favors worth hundreds of millions of dollars to a telecom company in exchange for favorable news stories. These aren't small accusations. They go to the heart of public trust. And even though the trial is still dragging on, it's hanging over everything he does. What's wild is that while all this is happening, he's trying to hang on to power by any means necessary. His coalition is shaky at best, held together by ultra-orthodox and far-right parties who demand everything from draft exemptions to religious control over civil life. Just recently, the Knesset barely avoided collapse in a vote over dissolving parliament. Netanyahu scraped by with a narrow 61-53 win, and he only managed that after making desperate backroom deals and promises that many believe he can't possibly keep. The fear in his camp is real, because if this government falls, he might finally face justice without political protection. And let's not forget how the rest of the world sees him. War criminal Netanyahu has become deeply unpopular outside of Israel. According to a 2024 Pew survey, majorities in 18 out of 24 countries had unfavorable views of Israel and Netanyahu personally. Even in the US, once a stronghold of support, public opinion is turning. American lawmakers are now openly criticizing him, and when former President Trump called on Israel to drop the charges and save Bibi, it caused outrage, even in Israel. The Israeli courts ignored the call, and opposition leaders slammed Trump for trying to interfere with their justice system. Even the recent strike on Iran's nuclear sites, which Netanyahu celebrated as a historic success, hasn't saved his image. Yes, a large portion of Jewish Israelis supported the attack, over 80% according to some polls, but that number drops sharply when you include Arab Israelis and the international community. People are asking tough questions. Was this really about security, or just another distraction from the disaster in Gaza and his ongoing trial? Some analysts believe the Iran strike gave Netanyahu a brief bump in popularity, but not enough to silence the domestic anger. And it certainly didn't stop the protests from exploding again once the ceasefire was announced. And then there's the looming ICC case. The International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu, citing alleged war crimes during the Gaza campaign. While it's unlikely he'll be arrested anytime soon, thanks to protection from countries like Hungary, the warrant itself is a historic stain. No Israeli leader has ever faced this level of international legal scrutiny. And that's not just symbolic. It's starting to affect Israel's diplomatic relationships too. At the end of the day, Netanyahu is running out of room to maneuver. His credibility is shot. His government is barely hanging on. The protests are getting louder, the courts aren't backing down, and more Israelis, people from all walks of life, are saying, enough is enough. Whether it's over his handling of the wars, his corruption trials, or his power grabs through judicial reform, it's clear that the Netanyahu era is crumbling. The question now is, will he take the whole country down with him, or will Israelis finally get the fresh start so many of them are demanding? Opposition leaders in Israel are pushing hard for a complete political reset, and they're not being subtle about it anymore. Yair Lapid, the former prime minister and head of the centrist Yesh Atid party, has become one of the loudest voices demanding that the extremist terrorist Netanyahu's government be brought down immediately. He's been rallying for the dissolution of the Knesset, saying outright that Netanyahu's administration is toxic, corrupt, and dangerous to Israel's democracy. After Netanyahu narrowly survived a no-confidence vote in mid-June, Lapid warned that the government was barely hanging on and called for new elections as soon as possible. His platform is straightforward: restore public trust, end the judicial overhaul, bring back democratic accountability, and resolve the crisis in Gaza by prioritizing a deal to return hostages, not using war as political theater. Benny Gantz, another key opposition figure and former terrorist IDF chief of staff, leads the National Unity Alliance, and he's also preparing to take over leadership of a post-Netanyahu government. While Gantz has sometimes cooperated with Netanyahu during times of national security crisis, like during the recent Iran strike, he has made it clear that he does not support Netanyahu's long-term rule or legal maneuverings. His party is currently preparing for internal leadership elections, which could bring in more military-aligned figures like Gadi Eisenkot. Gantz is seen by many as a steady, centrist figure who could appeal to both left-leaning moderates and soft right-wing voters looking for a break from Netanyahu's extremism. His vision for a new government includes halting the erosion of the judiciary, depoliticizing national security decisions, and building broader international credibility for Israel, especially as it faces possible isolation over war crimes allegations. Meanwhile, Naftali Bennett, who once briefly replaced Netanyahu as prime minister in 2021, is quietly plotting a political comeback. He recently registered a new party, nicknamed Bennett 2026, and according to internal polls, he's already gaining traction among center-right voters tired of Netanyahu's scandals. Bennett's appeal lies in his image as a more disciplined nationalist who doesn't carry the same baggage of corruption or authoritarian tendencies. He previously led a short-lived but surprisingly stable coalition that included both right-wing and centrist factions, even an Arab party. His return could provide a platform for a more technocratic, security-focused government that rejects both the religious hardliners and the judicial demolition squad currently empowering Netanyahu. On the more progressive side, Yair Golan, a former general and outspoken critic of Netanyahu, is leading the newly formed Democrats, a merger of the Labour and Meretz parties aimed at reviving Israel's crumbling left. While this bloc is still small in terms of seats, Golan's message is gaining support among young Israelis and the secular middle class. He's pushing for a full rollback of the judicial reforms, support for a two-state solution, and re-establishing civil liberties and freedom of speech, which have come under pressure during the ongoing conflicts. The Democrats might not win power on their own, but they are expected to be a key piece in any broad coalition that emerges after Netanyahu's fall. One of the biggest factors pushing the opposition together is the growing tension within Netanyahu's own coalition. His alliance with ultra-Orthodox parties is under strain, particularly over the issue of military draft exemptions. These parties are demanding permanent exemptions for their communities, while the Israeli public, especially secular and nationalist segments, is demanding equality in national service. This clash nearly brought the government down in June, during a failed vote to dissolve the Knesset. If those parties abandon him, or if a single party defects, Netanyahu's fragile coalition could collapse entirely. That's exactly what the opposition is waiting for. Lapid, Gantz and Bennett are already engaged in quiet talks to form an alternative coalition that would be more centrist, more stable, and less tied to extremist religious factions. Public opinion seems to be shifting in favor of these opposition figures. Polls conducted in May and June show that a majority of Israelis now want Netanyahu to resign. Over 70% say the government is not handling the Gaza war or the hostage crisis properly. There's also been a noticeable drop in support for the Likud party among younger voters and reservists, many of whom are part of the ongoing protest movement. The protests themselves have become more organized and focused, with weekly marches, sit-ins and high-profile speeches by former military commanders, legal experts, and even families of the hostages. These groups are now openly endorsing opposition leaders like Lapid and Gantz as the only viable path forward. If the government does fall, the opposition's plan seems clear. They want to hold early elections immediately. Once elected, they aim to pass emergency legislation to restore judicial independence, end draft exemptions for ultra-Orthodox men, and form a new war cabinet that focuses on diplomacy and hostage return instead of continued military escalation. Some are even proposing a rotation agreement, similar to what Lapid and Bennett had before, where the prime ministership is shared over a set term to keep the coalition balanced. This model could bring together Lapid's centrism, Gantz's military credibility, Bennett's nationalist base, and Golan's democratic ideals in one coalition, a sort of national unity government minus Netanyahu. In summary, the opposition isn't just protesting anymore, they're organizing. They have a shared vision of post-Netanyahu Israel that focuses on democracy, accountability, and unity. And with Netanyahu facing corruption trials, ICC warrants, a crumbling coalition, and mounting international pressure, the countdown to the end of his political career seems to be ticking faster than ever. If the current government falls, the opposition already has a playbook and key players ready to take over. And this time, they're determined not to let Netanyahu return.